For Project 2, Multiverse and Other Time Loops, we chose the time-bending TV show Loki. This was made by Pravansh Bhatia, Eric Brown, and Raymond Zhao. Nonlinear storytelling and sci-fi shows such as Loki present events out of chronological order using multiple methods to help explore complex relationships and philosophical questions. Our thesis is the 2021 TV series Loki utilizes the rich, chaotic multiverse of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to explore the complexities of identity, free will, and disorder. As Loki confronts the mastermind of the Time Variance Authority, or TVA, while encountering variants of himself, he grapples with the existential questions about his purpose, freedom, and destiny. Loki uses time manipulation through branching timelines, time loops, and temporal resets to explore Loki's internal conflict. These devices serve as a metaphor for the philosophical debate of destiny versus autonomy at the multiversal scale. In doing so, Loki immerses viewers in a narrative that questions the very nature of reality and self determination.
Let's begin by talking about what nonlinear storytelling means in Loki. So in Loki, there's a few different examples of different types of nonlinear storytelling. So on the slide, we see the timeline from the past to the future with the present at a certain point. And one type of nonlinear storytelling that can be used is a rewind. So time goes backwards for some reason, and then continues on from some point in the past. Another nonlinear storytelling point that can be used is a flashback, when the narrator or the time period flashes back from the present to some time in the past to convey some point or show some idea. And a third type that's really prevalent in Loki is going outside of the timeline. And that will become more clear what that means as we look at the next clip. For some quick context on the clip, Loki has been pulled out of his timeline by this authority called the Time Variance Authority. So essentially, he's in that third form of nonlinear storytelling, being pulled out of the timeline. And Loki's, obviously as anyone would be, he can't believe he's there, and because that he's insubordinate. So the TVA shows him this clip, and it's stated, it's supposed to calm him, create a sense of understanding, to kind of make him complicit to the TVA, but there is a more of an understated implied purpose that it's clearly a psychological attack showing an individual their own death, and it's meant to disarm him in a way to make him moldable for the TVA. As I stated previously, this sort of nonlinear storytelling kind of deforms time in multiple ways. So first of all, he's clearly outside of the timeline, and this kind of creates a distance between these events that we see that we know from the MCU and the Loki we see here. But in addition, there's like sort of compression of time. You see an entire lifetime in a few minutes, and this really just helps to psychologically overwhelm Loki within the context of the show. But overall, what it does is it takes a character who's been seen as a villain throughout this entire cinematic universe, and it kind of distances him from that vision of him, and it makes him more humbled, complex, and relatable. And that's kind of how he's set up for the rest of the show.
You!
Sif!
You conniving, craven, pathetic worm! You did this!
What?
I hope you know you deserve to be alone, and you always will be.
All right. A bad memory prison? How quaint. Some punishment. I remember exactly what I did after that. I went and had a nice hot bath and a glass of wine, and I never thought about it again because it was just a bit of fun.
You conniving, craven, pathetic worm. You did this.
Hang on. Ow.
I hope you know you deserve to be alone, and you always will be.
Time loops. How lovely. Oh.
The clip you just saw was a demonstration of how time loops and multiverse theory works in Loki. So for context on this clip, Loki causes a nexus event, basically a catastrophic event in a certain timeline, and Mobius, his sort of caretaker throughout the show, is fed up with him and places him in this time loop where he has to relive this moment with Lady Sif as punishment. So it's obvious in the clip how he's repeating this over and over again, so it's a time loop, but it's also multiversal given the context of the entire show. If you think about it in such a way that this isn't the same Loki repeating this event infinite times, it's really infinite Lokis who are reliving this one moment, and the choice he makes is what determines that outcome. But in addition, it's sort of like an ironic metaphor on just Loki's character arc in general, the fact that he's in a time loop, because his character arc is a loop throughout the entire MCU. He's goes from betrayal to gaining sympathy and finally a friend again, but then there is another betrayal inevitably. In contrast to that portrayal, however, you have the ending of the time loop, which I was unfortunately not able to find as a clip, but essentially he apologizes to Sif and he is able to escape the time loop through this sympathy. So this kind of aligns with more of how his character is developing within the show. He's human, he's invoking pathos and empathy out of the audience, which is kind of what the writers want throughout the entire show. But we also see it took one Loki after an insane amount of tries out of insane renditions of this scenario happening, which kind of creates like a seed of doubt as to whether people can actually change. But even a character like Loki in this trap state does have some free will, and his choices do change the outcome, at least in this microcosm. But like I was saying, it took a lot of Lokis and a lot of time, and this just shows how difficult it is for anyone to change behavior, but also in the show's context, how rare and how difficult it is to get a favorable Loki.
Another way Loki explores the conflict between destiny and autonomy is through his relationship with Sylvie, a female variant of himself from another timeline. Near the start of their relationship, they begin to explore the stark difference between them, despite being variations of the same person.
Because that's not who I am anymore. I'm Sylvie now.
Oh, you changed your name. Brilliant.
It's called an alias.
It's not very Loki-like.
Yeah? What exactly makes a Loki a Loki?
Independence, authority, style.
So naturally you went to work for the boring, oppressive time police.
I don't work for them. I'm a consultant.
You don't know what you want.
Oh, yeah? What about you? Your years in the making plan was to tear the place down, create the ultimate power vacuum, and then just walk away. I'd never have done that.
Yeah? Well, I'm not you. Can we get on with this now?
At its heart, this scene is a conflict between Loki's values and the realization of his reality. The scene starts with Sylvie asking, what exactly makes a Loki a Loki? Loki responds with his own values of independence, authority, and style. To Loki, these are the traits that identify himself. Yet Sylvie challenges this notion by showing his stark reality of working for the boring and oppressive time police, a direct contrast to his self-perceived independence and authority. Her remark suggests that by cooperating with the TVA, Loki is compromising the very qualities that define him. The contrast between Loki's reality and Sylvie's reality further challenges his identity and autonomy. While it's established that Loki is working from the inside under another's authority, Sylvie works alone to completely tear down the TVA, actions that completely align with none other than Loki's own values of independence, authority, and style. Yet by the end of the scene, Sylvie reiterates that I'm not you, that she isn't Loki. By doing so, Sylvie establishes that although she manifests Loki's values, she acts based on her own free will and not her identity as Loki. Thus, Loki is forced to question his own identity and question how much autonomy he really has in the face of his flashy values. Another way the show questions the nature of destiny and autonomy is through the TVA itself. In the show, the TVA is portrayed to be the absolute authority of time by enforcing the sacred timeline and pruning any other timelines that branch off from the sacred timeline. Yet, in reality, the TVA isn't really as absolute as they make themselves out to be. In No Time is Sacred, the performance of power and authority in Loki, Kevin Drakowski argues that, quote, the TVA's decision of how to label the forking timelines is arbitrary. The TVA exists to legitimize the status of its own branch as the proverbial trunk, as the sacred timeline, end quote. Drakowski argues that the TVA isn't really enforcing a sacred timeline, but merely only allowing their own timeline to stay alive. The TVA has tricked its members into enforcing an arbitrary timeline, and in doing so, has effectively pruned away any real freedom in the name of order. Thus, Drakowski gets at the core conflict between freedom and order in the show, where separate timelines act as freedom, while the TVA acts as absolute order. The TVA would like us to believe that there is no freedom and only one timeline can stay alive. Yet by the end of the show, the timelines become freed from the perceived power of the TVA, effectively rejecting order and allowing freedom to prevail. By using diverging timelines, the show is able to express the necessity of free will and the lengths that some entities may go to limit people's power.
Conclusion. The 2021 TV series Loki employs the immense and chaotic multiverse of the MCU to get the audience to explore deep philosophical questions about identity, free will, and disorder. Branching timelines, time loops, and temporal resets show us Loki's personal struggle with destiny versus autonomy. As Loki encounters and confronts the mastermind behind the TVA while coming across variants of himself, he wrestles with questions about his purpose, freedom, and destiny. In the end, Loki goes above and beyond the stereotypical superhero storytelling and uses time manipulation as a metaphor for the human experience, which challenges us to reconsider the nature of our reality and our place in it. This leaves us considering the question, are we truly free to choose our future, or are we simply just following a path already created for us? And then here are our sources for this project.